So Trump has officially recognized Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights, and a huge boon to Bibi Netanyahu. Netanyahu, of course, is facing a very tough election coming up. He is facing corruption charges and trying to keep his position as prime minister and his party's majority in the parliament. Now, Mr. Trump, of course, is one of Bibi's best friends on the world stage. In fact, in Bibi's words, Trump is pretty much his greatest ally he's ever had in any country. And of course, Trump has already helped out Bibi in the past by recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. Recognizing Golan is just sort of the next step in that process. Israel's controlled the Golan Heights since the Six-Day War, which was over 50 years ago, if I remember correctly. And ever since then, the Syrian government, led for most of that time by Assad and his father, have wanted it back. And internationally, the UN and most other countries tended to side with the Assad family over the Israelis, because that's who controlled it before the war, and Israel kept control of it after the war. So personally, I don't care much who controls what territories. I don't really believe in sovereignty. I don't think any states are more legitimate than others. I think they're all illegitimate to the extent that they oppress their people, which I'm sure, whether you're talking about the Israelis or the government in Damascus, you're going to have folks suppressing the residents of the Golan Heights to some extent. Now, with that said, from what I understand, the Israelis haven't exactly treated the native population all that well, and they, of course, have moved in their trademark settlements into the area to make sure that there is a permanent Israeli population there, making it that much harder for them to pull out in case Assad or anybody else tried to push Israel out. This also made it easier for Trump to recognize them, because Trump can look on the ground there and he says, well, there's Israeli people there, there's Israeli flags flying, well, that's clearly a part of Israel. And in all practical sense, he would be correct in assuming that, because ultimately the way that borders have changed in the past has been through conquest and through colonization. So the fact that people who weren't Israelis lived there 50 years ago doesn't really matter now that the Israelis live there and the Israeli government controls it. It's about as much of Israel as any other part of the country. Now, with that said, I don't agree with Mr. Trump in this case. I don't think it's really fair for him to say recognize the Israeli annexation of the Golan Heights and not, the Russian annexation of Crimea. Say what you will about either of those situations, but it's inconsistent for the president to just pick sides based on, who's nice to him in the world stage. If you really have any sort of principle, you would stand up either for territorial sovereignty or for practicality. Now, considering the size of the settler population in the Golan Heights, it's only about 20,000, and the fact that Trump was able to recognize all of Golan as Israeli, I would say that it's only a matter of time before Trump declares that all of the West Bank is in fact Israeli territory, because the settlement project in the West Bank has been far more comprehensive and effective than the settlements in the Golan Heights. The West Bank is completely peppered with Israeli towns scattered all throughout, where the Arabs live. And the Arabs essentially are locked into an archipelago with a bunch of walls around them. And every year those walls close in just a little bit tighter. I'd imagine it's getting a bit claustrophobic there as it is. And if you look at the demographics, assuming that the census data is correct in the West Bank, if Israel were to annex the West Bank and even grant voting rights to all of the Palestinians who live there, Israel would still have a majority Jewish population. So this is a practical matter that Bibi could achieve. Now, ideally, there would be some ethnic cleansing of the Palestinian population, because Bibi, of course, wants a supermajority of Jews in Israel, not just a simple majority. Arabs, as it is, are only about 20% of the voting population of Israel, and I don't think that Bibi wants to increase their electoral power any more than that. However, the dream of reuniting Judea and Samaria with the Israeli state is alive and well in the hearts of the Likud party. So I wouldn't be surprised if Trump is reelected. I think that it's extremely likely that we see a U.S. recognition of Israeli sovereignty over all of the West Bank. Now back to Golan, however, I think that since Trump has just recognized Israeli sovereignty, if I were in Assad's shoes, I would be considering invading the Golan to try and stop this from spreading, because now that the U.S. has recognized it, that'll send a signal to the rest of the world. I would look first to Australia. That'll probably be the next country to recognize them. It'll send a signal to the international community that now it's more acceptable to consider Israel the sovereign over the Golan, and of course Assad is already very unpopular internationally, but this is the one area really where Assad has maintained the high ground throughout the civil war, is that people still internationally recognize the Golan as Syrian territory. So if Assad stands any chance of reclaiming the Golan, it would be at this very moment. He would need to invade and push the Israelis out. And like I said, there's only 20,000 civilians there. Israeli civilians, that is. The rest of them, I'd imagine, are all people who would have held Syrian citizenship prior to the Six-Day War. So I would watch as soon as this week to see if Assad makes any moves on the Golan, because really it's now or never as far as that's concerned, because countries left and right now will probably start recognizing Golan as Israeli territory, just like they started recognizing Jerusalem as the capital. Like I said, I believe Australia was the first or the second after the U.S. to recognize Jerusalem as the capital. I wouldn't be surprised if within the next couple days Australia comes out and recognizes the Golan. So stay tuned to this channel for that, because I will be putting out videos on all of that. If that ends up materializing, I'm going to watch this very closely. So if you gained anything of value from this video, please do click the like button and hit the subscribe to make sure you don't miss my next videos on this. I do upload every day, so I'll see you all tomorrow.